The drama in Cincinnati with Trey Hendrickson, well, it's still ongoing and it took another level on Wednesday. We also have some Kirk Cousins updates potentially going on and still some ripple effects from the owner meetings, which wrapped up the other day. NFL Spotlight starts now. Welcome in. It is the Thursday, April 3 edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. I am your host, Ari Meirov. All the owners and GMs and head coaches are back, whether it's in their city, the facilities, or the pro day circuit. A big pro day coming up on Friday with Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter over in Boulder, Colorado. But we still had a lot of NFL news happen over here on Wednesday. We also had some other things that we got to get to from the owner meetings that there's still discussion in league circles about it. Let me bring in my good friend Ben Allen. Ben, what is going on? How are you? Good to see you here today. Where are we starting on this Thursday?
Yeah, what's going on, Ari? Let's go ahead and start with the Cincinnati Bengals and Trey Hendrickson. Things don't appear to be in a good place right now. Hendrickson, of course, led the NFL in sacks this past season, and he's looking for a new contract as his upcoming year is the last one on his deal. The Bengals have been working with him to try to come to either an agreement on an extension or potentially a trade after he made the request. But all the offers that have come into Trey so far, not been happy with. They're not up to par for what he's looking for. Apparently, the Bengals think you should be happy. These are right offers for you. Oh, by the way, all of this is now being shared on camera on the Pat McAfee show and through the media. So what it was ever happening internally is now happening out in the public sphere. How do we get to a resolution between these two sides? And what is it actually trending towards at this point?
You know, man, the crazy part about this is that the Bengals and that organization, the momentum they were riding from getting Jamar Chase done and getting T. Higgins done, and then there were these rumblings, maybe now they're really going to start pushing and figuring out Trey Hendrickson. It felt like finally all is good in Cincinnati. Give them credit, which we should, for getting those two receivers done. But this Trey Hendrickson situation has been ongoing this entire offseason. There was a trade request last year as well. 17 and a half sacks last year, led the NFL, 17 and a half sacks the year before as well. He continues to be one of the very best pass rushers and a true sack artist in the NFL. Katie Blackburn, who is the owner's daughter, coming out at the owners' meetings and speaking to local reporters. And she's usually not one to talk about contract situations or make any headlines. And for her to come out, and I'll read the quote that was shocking, and which is what Trey Hendrickson called out on Wednesday on the McAfee show. She said, I think he should be happy at certain rates that maybe he doesn't think he would be happy at. And it's basically saying that Trey has been frustrated for a very long time, and we've made offers to him that we think he should be satisfied with. Now, I'll tell you right now, the offers that have been made have been well below where the pass rush market is. And goodbye, Trey Hendrickson, who was on the McAfee show, saying it the way it is. I wanted an extension a couple of years ago that would have been where the top of the market or where my pass rush market was at the time, which was, Rashawn Gary, Montez Sweat. They didn't do it back then. Last year, when I wanted a new deal, that was Brian Burns, Josh Hines Allen. They didn't do it then. This offseason, I wanted a new deal. I'm going to keep on looking at what the pass rush market is. We've seen Myles Garrett happen. We've seen Danielle Hunter happen. We've seen Max Crosby happen. We'll see eventually Michael Parsons, Aiden Hutchinson, and TJ Watt get done. So I obviously want to be where the rest of my market is. So whatever Katie Blackburn said the other day at the owners' meetings, that is shocking. And this is the way the market works. Where the market is where I'm supposed to be. And from my understanding, Trey is now looking to become the highest paid pass rusher ever, highest paid non-quarterback. He just wants to be fairly compensated. I think that 32, 33, $34 million per year range, maybe 35 is kind of where he's looking at. And then there's the structure, and he doesn't want to do a one-year deal. He doesn't want to do a multi-year deal where there are incentives he has to reach in order to make his money. He wants it to be a true extension. And to this point, the offers that were made even before Max Crosby got done and before Myles Garrett got done, those offers were well below the market. And this is on top of the fact that he still has 1 year left at $16 million this year. So that is way below where the market is. So if you're going to extend him, you're going to include that $16 million as well. And because of that, the average of the entire overall deal, including the $16 million, is obviously going to come down way lower than where he would like it to be. So it's a very complex situation. Yes, they gave him permission to seek a trade. That thing really went nowhere. The other thing that has not really been talked about in the media, and I'll say it right now, part of the issue here is, and Trey kind of said it, but didn't give the full story. He mentioned how the communication has been really poor. When Jamar Chase and T. Higgins did their deals, the communication was between the agent, Rocky Arsenal, and there's a lot of talks with Duke Tobin, who is like the de facto GM, Katie Blackburn, who is usually the one person who negotiates the contracts. Those are the two main people. Troy Blackburn as well is very important there. The negotiation in Cincinnati, at least the communication, there's been very little communication with Katie Blackburn and Trey's side. Very little negotiation with Duke Tobin and Trey's side. For the most part, they've been giving the communication over to people who are number 3, number 4, number 5 in that front office. And that is not the way it should be done. So when Trey says the communication has been poor, part of the problem is the people who actually make the decision that are supposed to be talking about this are not talking to Trey's people. So that has been an issue as well. So we'll see where this goes. There is no real deadline for this to happen. Trey has been wanting a new deal for a while. He has said how much he loves Cincinnati, how much he loves the fans, how much he wants to win a Super Bowl, how important, obviously, he has been to that franchise. Probably, arguably, the best free agent signing in that franchise's history, but they have been against really trying to push this forward. I do think they've come to the conclusion that they're not going to trade him because they want to ask for a lot. And of course, Trey is looking for a contract as well. So getting all those pieces to align in a trade is very complex. But until they step forward and get, whether it's Katie or Duke or Troy or the owner, Mike Brown, to actually be involved in those negotiations, Trey is getting very upset. And we had Trey on the show over here during the season. It was around week 15, week 16. I mentioned at the time, we've been wanting to get Trey on the show for weeks dating back to before the season even started, because this is somebody who deserves more of a spotlight for how great of a player he is. I mentioned back then, Trey is not a media guy. He does not like talking about himself. He does not want to be out there. He likes giving the credit to other people. The fact that he has been doing the media and went on this show, going on McAfee twice, going on Radio Row, that is not what he wants to do. But it's gotten to a point over these last couple of years where he has to speak for himself. And he finally is. And he's still being this really nice guy. Like, he's not pushing any crazy buttons yet, but I'm telling you, he wants to. And to this point, the Bengals have not been willing to really step forward to the point where they should. We'll see if this changes, but he has gotten really, really frustrated. Him going on the McAfee show to respond to Katie Blackburn is another point of view where he is so upset right now. And we'll see if they change anything. But to this point, it has been status quo in Cincinnati with Trey Hendrickson.
Why aren't they speaking to his representatives directly? What would be the reasoning for not wanting to do so? Because wouldn't it be in their best interest in general for this to kind of go away and be a non-issue and not be something that's hovering over them when the draft happens here in 3 weeks?
This is the thing. The communication being so poor is the weird part about this. And that's the one thing I have not been able to understand. Like, why not have, whether it's Katie or Duke, make that call and say, listen, we are very interested. We know you're frustrated, but we'll do this post draft. Or let's set up a Zoom meeting on X and X date. So far, the only real communication, there was a meeting in that building before when the offseason started where there were talks and there was an agreement that we'll work really hard to get you done. Then there was the time when Trey went into the building himself. I believe he met either with Troy or with one of the really important people in that building and let them know, listen, I'm going to request a trade again. Please give me permission. They did, which was shocking. And the news got out later that day. And that so far has really been the most of the communication that they've had when it comes to that side. All the other communication with the Bengals have been with the other people in the organization who don't have as much juice as a Katie or a Duke have. So I don't know what the reason is. I'll give you an example. The Broncos, for example, they have to negotiate with Zach Allen and Nick Bonito and all those guys who need extensions. They've made it clear to them that we're not going to negotiate right now. After the draft, we'll start talking to you. The Bengals do the same thing, but they have not really given any clarity to all of this. And that is the weird part about all of it. When it was Jamar and T, that was really done with Duke. That was done with Katie. It was handled the right way. Jamar and T, for the most part, stayed out of the media, did not make any crazy comments because they knew there was slight progress being made slowly but surely, and eventually the deals got done. This one, it's just been going slow and it's been going nowhere. And it's like, why don't you make a call? And who's going to make the call first? And who's going to give the leverage away? And it's a staring match. And it's kind of weird. So we'll see if anything changes. But I don't know why the Bengals have acted this way. But there have been a number of deals that have gotten done, from Danielle Hunter to Myles Garrett to Max Crosby. Danielle being the one that's really most relevant to me over here because similar age, both had 1 year left on their deals. He got a 1 year extension. Trey wants 2 or 3 years. That is really the blueprint of what a deal should look like. And so far, again, the communication has just been awful here for whatever reason.
All right. Well, from one guy who wants to get moved if he can't get paid to a guy who wants to get moved but maybe can't because he's already been paid, it's Kirk Cousins. Cousins is set to become the highest paid backup ever in 2025, as the Atlanta Falcons are now committed to Michael Penix Jr., the soon-to-be sophomore quarterback, for the foreseeable future. The Falcons have been unwilling to dump Cousins for absolutely nothing because they've paid him a lot of money. Falcons owner Arthur Blank and Kirk Cousins spoke last month about a potential trade, but no promises were made. So take of that as you will. Where do we stand with this story, Ari?
Kirk spoke to Arthur Blank, like you said, and he made it clear to him that, I know this didn't go so well, but I do want to be a starter in the NFL. I would appreciate it if you guys release me and let me find a new location and move on. Arthur Blank, he told the reporters there in Florida at the owners' meetings that it was a true heart-to-heart conversation. There were points throughout of it where he was taking notes, and he really felt for Kirk Cousins a little bit. But he's also looking at this as a business decision. And to this point, he paid Kirk Cousins last year $62.5 million. He's paying him this year $27.5 million fully guaranteed. And he's already allowed a $10 million trigger for 2026 to become fully guaranteed, but it does have offsets. So if he does go somewhere else, that money is something that could offset with a different contract. But the point being, Arthur Blank is like, I'm anyways paying you this year, so I released you and let you go somewhere else. If anything, we're going to try to get something for you, in a way, try to buy a draft pick here and essentially move on from you in that direction. So that has been where this thing has stood for a while. And the more this goes on, the more it feels like there actually is a possibility here where a team would be willing to trade for Kirk Cousins, pay some of that contract, not all of it. Atlanta will pay and eat some of the money, but take him on. And really, you look at this quarterback draft class that we have coming up. The draft is in exactly 3 weeks from today. You look at it, the growing belief continues to be Tennessee, Cam Ward, and number 1. Shedeur Sanders is going to have his pro day tomorrow. He's going to meet with the Titans, the Giants, the Browns. He's going to have those discussions as well. Maybe he solidifies himself. Maybe he doesn't. But everyone in the NFL is focused on the Cleveland Browns and what they do there at number 2. Because if they go in the Abdul Carter direction or the Travis Hunter direction, people do believe that the quarterback to watch for them would be Kirk Cousins, because there is a familiarity there with the head coach in Kevin Stefanski. Kevin, of course, before going to Cleveland to become the head coach, he was the offensive coordinator in Minnesota of Kirk Cousins. He was the quarterback's coach before that with Kirk Cousins, and there was some success there from Kirk's play with Kevin Stefanski. So it would make sense there that if they want to go in the veteran quarterback direction, if they don't love Shedeur Sanders, who is likely going to be on the board there for them at number 2, and they want to get an Abdul Carter, for example, to pair with Myles Garrett and be the eventual replacement for Myles Garrett, they could go in that direction with Kirk Cousins. We saw what the ownership there in Cleveland said during the owners' meetings, admitting the mistake with Deshaun Watson, calling it a big swing and a miss. it's pretty clear already. Sean Watson, even with 2 years left in the contract, even though he's obviously missing this year, might be back next year, he is not the quarterback anymore in Cleveland. So maybe they move in a different direction, like a Kirk Cousins, and try to get him in a trade where maybe they take on $9 million of his contract or whatever it is. Atlanta pays the rest, and that will become their quarterback. And if you guys recall, the Browns went through this a few years ago when they were trading a quarterback after the draft in Baker Mayfield. He had a big salary for his fifth-year option. The Panthers traded for him. They paid about, I think it was $14 million of that salary. The Browns paid the rest. And that essentially is what happened, where they were able to get their quarterback in Carolina, because they, if you guys remember, they had the number 6 overall pick. People were saying, oh, they'll take Kenny Pickett at number 6. They did not take Kenny Pickett. They took Ike Ekwonu instead. Then they traded for their quarterback in Baker Mayfield, which did not work out, of course, in Carolina. But the point is, this structure, this type of scenario has happened before in the NFL, and people believe that the Cleveland Browns are the team to watch if it does unfold that way. If not Cleveland, it could be a different team, but people believe that is the scenario that's going to unfold with Kirk Cousins in Atlanta.
You love to see it. Is there any chance he goes back to Minnesota?
If they're not pursuing Aaron Rodgers, and if Kirk Cousins has made it clear that I want to be a starter this year, and the Vikings are out here saying we want JJ to be the starter, we're not going to bring in Aaron, because if Aaron comes here, he's obviously going to be the starter. He's not coming to be a backup. I don't see Kirk going back to Minnesota unless he's assured the starting job, which I would imagine is not happening, because again, they have announced out there they like what they have with JJ McCarthy. So I don't see Minnesota being an option, but you look at Cleveland, if something happens in Pittsburgh where Aaron does not end up there, those type of teams, in my mind, make more sense.
All right. And finally, let's go ahead and revisit the hot topic from the league meetings, the Tush Push. While it was tabled, there is still a chance that it could be banned in May. And there was a pretty decent split with the owners on the issue, where some of them were for it, some of them were against it. That number came out to be pretty even. You can give us a little bit more insight to that in a moment. But you were telling me there is a feeling that more of the owners could slide into the way of not being in favor of it in the future. What can you share with us on that topic?
The owners meetings ends, you try to, reach out to people and be like, hey, what'd you think about this? What'd you think about that? And of course, the biggest discussion was the tush push. And when you reach out to people, and I kind of mentioned it yesterday because that was the feeling that I had, but Roger Goodell having his end of owner meetings press conference, which he does every single year when it's over. And Roger, we've learned over the year, he is very selective with his words. If he doesn't want to say anything, he's going to create a word salad of nothing. If he wants to create a message out there and put it in the ether, he knows how to do it. A couple of years ago, he put it out there about the 18-game schedule. Look how we're talking a lot about it. So Roger Goodell going out there and saying that this is a play that he believes should be taken out. It's something that we don't have any data on it right now with injuries, but it could cause catastrophic injury. It's something that we should look back to the way the rule used to be back in 2004, where you cannot shove somebody from behind. Him openly saying that is basically an acknowledgement that he wants this out of the league. And that is why it was tabled over here at the owners' meetings. They did not have the votes. They had 16 yeses and 16 noes over here. So that means they were 8 short. They could have essentially said, you know what, we're not going to get it this year. Move on. Maybe we'll look at it after another year. Them deciding we're going to table this has people thinking that they're going to either adjust the wording of the Packers proposal, which, by the way, for what it's worth, I'm going to sidetrack for a second. I know the Packers were the ones to propose this. I've also heard, though, that it wasn't the Packers who were like, we're going to do this and propose this. The Packers, their president, Mark Murphy, he wrote it in a column on the website that he does not like the tush push. There's people who believe Roger actually was the one who reached out to Mark and said, you've already taken the lead on this. Why don't you be the one who proposes this, and I'll be on your side? If that's the case, then Roger wants it out of the game. Then that is the big deal. And Roger knows how to twist some arms over here. So he needs 8 owners to flip their vote whenever they meet again in May. We have seen him flip votes in the past. A couple of years ago, when there was the idea of introducing Thursday night flexing, they were short on the votes in the March meetings. They tabled it to the May meetings. he got two or three more votes to flip and got it done in May. If Roger wants something, he'll be able to figure it out. The wording that the Packers proposed in that entire thing, there were some loopholes there. There were a lot of questions about it. They're going to have to patch some things up over here, but I think they're going to bring it back to the table over here in the May meetings with different verbiage and wording over there to make it a little bit more clear on what is not allowed and the loopholes to be fixed about. If you look at the reading, it basically says you cannot push somebody immediately. There was some talk in the room. What does immediately mean? Does that mean if the quarterback starts the sneak, then 4 seconds later somebody pushes him? Is that okay? There was talk about only you could push from the center. That means if you line up behind the guard, that means you could push him. There were a lot of loopholes throughout that entire proposal that needs to be patched up. But I think they're going to patch this up, and I think they're going to have a lot of owner discussions and Roger Goodell discussions with owners in this next month and a half before the next owner meetings in Minneapolis. And frankly, it would not surprise me if that does end up happening. It's not going to be easy. Flipping 8 votes is hard, but I think they're going to try very hard to get this out of the game. And if Roger wants it out of the game, I think it does get out of the game.
Why ultimately do you think he wants it out of the game so bad?
There's a few things. I think the aesthetics of it is a real thing. The way it looks on the football field, it's just not football. That's what Sean McVay said. Some people have brought up the entire injury thing. Dr. Alan Sills, the lead medical officer for the NFL, has made it clear through presentations that our data and our medical, what we see, what we believe, that this type of a play where everyone is scrumped together could result in a, quote, catastrophic neck or spinal injury or even a head injury, which for the NFL, that's the last thing they want to hear. So Roger Goodell, who over the years has had to testify in Congress for concussions and those type of stuff, he never wants to go through that again. So if he hears from his top medical officer that this play could lead to that, he's going to take it out of the game, on top of the fact that, again, it does not look like football to him. And keep in mind, Roger Goodell, about a year ago or 2 years ago when he was asked about this, he was perfectly fine about this. There has been a change in tune over here over this last couple of months since the proposal was made. Whatever it was, whatever data they showed, whatever the doctors have showed him, it clearly has scared him off. And I think because of that, this next month and a half, it would not surprise me if this does flip over here some way, somehow, when they meet again in May in Minneapolis.
Well, something else that should flip is your finger over to the YouTube app on your phone and make sure you hit that subscribe button while you're there. Transitions, Ari. Transitions. It's just what I do.
You're much better than me at transitions, but that was a clever one. I'll give you some credit. It was a bit corny, but I'll give it to you.
Corny is my middle name. Corny is my middle name. Benjamin Corny Allen.
Benjamin Corny Allen. Is that an April Fool's joke also, or is that real?
Well, today is April 3rd now, so it is. It's a real thing.
Well, when you did that April Fool's joke the other day, it was March 31st. So,
okay. Well, it's 5:00 somewhere.
All right, that will do it here for our April 3rd edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. We will wrap up the week here tomorrow. Look ahead also to this big Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter Pro Day. I don't think they're actually calling it a Pro Day because Deion does everything different. I think they're calling it the Colorado Showcase, so it's not really a Pro Day officially, but they're going to have a lot of NFL teams and officials and GMs and coaches all there to watch Shedeur and watch Travis. And if they put on a show, I guarantee you it will be all over your X feeds and Instagram feeds and whatnot. So we'll look ahead to that as well and wrap up the week here tomorrow. We'll see you then.